The mower cut out at exactly 9:47 p.m. on a Tuesday that would change everything. I was hunched over the busted craftsman in my shop, grease under my fingernails and the taste of cheap coffee going cold in my mouth, when my phone buzzed with a text from my wife. Emergency at Mom's. Need to help her tonight. Don't wait up. Love you. Sarah had been pulling this routine a lot lately. Always some crisis with her mother. Always something that couldn't wait until morning. I wiped my hands on a shop rag and stared at the message, feeling that familiar knot in my gut that had been growing tighter for weeks. My name is Eli Weston, and I've been running Weston Landscaping for 15 years in this forgotten corner of Indiana. It's honest work. Dirty, backbreaking, but honest. I know every lawn, every hedge, every cracked driveway in a 20-mile radius. I know which houses hide secrets behind their perfectly manicured facades. I should have known mine was one of them. The drive home took me past the Riverside Motel, a rundown place that rents rooms by the hour to truckers and cheaters. That's when I saw it, Sarah's white Honda Civic parked between a rusted pickup and a motorcycle that made me freeze. A custom Harley-Davidson Sportster, candy apple red with chrome exhaust pipes. My stepson Tommy's bike. I pulled into the parking lot, hands shaking as I turned off the engine. Tommy was 26, Sarah's kid from her first marriage. Cocky, entitled, always had his hand out for money. He worked as a personal trainer at the fancy gym downtown, spent more on protein powder than I made in a week. The motel office reeked of cigarettes and Pine Sol. The desk clerk, a skeletal woman with yellow teeth, barely looked up from her soap opera. Room 237, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. My wife checked in, Sarah Weston. I need to surprise her. She glanced at the register. Yeah, she's here, but honey, you might want to... I was already walking toward the stairs. The hallway stretched forever, each step echoing off water-stained walls. Room 237 was at the end, and through the thin door I could hear voices. Sarah's laugh, the one she used to save for me, and Tommy's voice, low and intimate. We can't keep doing this, Sarah was saying. Why not? He's clueless. Always has been. My hand found the spare key Sarah kept in her purse. I'd grabbed it from her car, muscle memory from years of marriage. The lock turned silently. The door opened on a scene that carved itself into my brain with surgical precision. Sarah on the bed, wearing nothing but a hotel towel. Tommy standing by the window in his underwear, counting cash. They both turned when they heard the door. Eli, Sarah gasped, clutching the towel to her chest. Tommy just smiled. Hey, Dad. The word hit me like a sledgehammer. This kid I'd helped raise, whose college I'd helped pay for, whose car I'd co-signed, he was looking at me like I was the punchline to a joke only he understood. How long? I asked. Sarah's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Tommy answered for her. 6 months, maybe 7. Hard to keep track. I wanted to hit him. Wanted to wrap my hands around his throat and squeeze until that smirk disappeared forever. Instead, I took a step back. Get dressed, I said to Sarah. Both of you. Eli, please, Sarah started. Let me explain. There's nothing to explain. I can see exactly what this is. I turned and walked out, closing the door behind me with deliberate calm. In the parking lot, I stopped beside Tommy's bike. Beautiful machine. Probably cost him $15,000, most of it my money through Sarah. I pulled out my pocket knife and punctured both tires. The hiss of escaping air was the sweetest sound I'd heard all day. Then I drove home to plan what came next. My house felt different when I walked through the front door. Every photo on the mantel, every piece of furniture we'd picked out together, every shared memory, all of it contaminated by what I'd seen. I poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon and sat in my recliner, staring at the wedding photo on the side table. Sarah looked so young in that picture. 24 to my 38 when we got married 5 years ago. I'd thought I was the luckiest man alive, landing a woman that beautiful, that full of life. Now I wondered how long I'd been the fool in this story. She came home at midnight, creeping through the door like a teenager missing curfew. I was still in my chair, still nursing that same glass of bourbon. Eli, are you awake? Hard to sleep when your wife's out screwing your stepson. She flinched like I'd slapped her. Good. It's not what you think, she said, the oldest lie in the book. Really? Because what I think is that you've been lying to my face for months while you and Tommy laugh about what a sucker I am. Am I wrong? Sarah sat on the couch across from me, still in the clothes she'd worn to the motel. Her makeup was smeared, her hair messed up. She looked exactly like what she was. I never meant for it to happen, she whispered. But it did happen. Again and again. In cheap motels while I'm working my ass off to pay for your lifestyle. Tommy said you wouldn't understand. He said you were too old, too set in your ways to... Tommy said? I laughed, and the sound was ugly even to my own ears. You're taking relationship advice from a 26-year-old who's never held a real job in his life? He understands me in ways you don't. Yeah, I bet he does. Especially the part where you hand him cash after he's done understanding you. Sarah's face went white. That's not... How did you... I saw him counting it. Payment for services rendered. She started crying then. Big dramatic sobs that might have worked on me a week ago. Now they just sounded like noise. I want you out, I said. This is my home, too. Actually, it's not. Check the deed, check the mortgage, check who's been paying the bills while you play house with Tommy. Her tears stopped. You can't just throw me out. Watch me. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. Instead, I drove to the office of Stanley Reese, the meanest divorce attorney in 3 counties. Stan the Shark, people called him. He'd earned the nickname. Adultery's not what it used to be in court, Stan told me, leaning back in his leather chair. But it still carries weight, especially when there's documentation. What kind of documentation? Photos, videos, financial records showing you supporting the other party, hotel receipts, text messages. I thought about the motel security cameras, about Sarah's phone that she left lying around, about the credit card statements I'd been ignoring. How long would something like this take? Depends on how messy you want to get. Clean and simple? 6 months? Scorched earth? Stan smiled, showing teeth like a shark indeed. However long it takes to grind them into powder. Scorched earth. That afternoon, I went to see my oldest friend, Mark Dixon. Digger owned the Rusty Anchor, the kind of bar where working men went to forget their troubles. He'd been a cop for 20 years before buying the place, and he still had connections all over town. Jesus, Eli, he said after I told him everything. I knew that kid was trouble, but this? I need help, Dig. The kind of help that doesn't show up on any official records. Digger poured 2 shots of whiskey and slid one across the bar. What did you have in mind? Information, leverage, ways to make them understand that screwing with me was the biggest mistake of their lives. That's a dangerous road, brother. They put me on it. I'm just going to see where it leads. We drank to that, and Digger made some calls. By closing time, I had copies of the motel security footage, Sarah's phone records, and a detailed financial history of every dollar I'd spent on Tommy over the past 2 years. The number was staggering. $43,000 in car payments, insurance, gym equipment, clothes, and cash handouts. Money that came out of my pocket while he was planning to stab me in the back. I went home and found Sarah packing a suitcase. Where are you going? I asked. Tommy's apartment, just until we can figure this out. We? There is no we anymore, Sarah. There's you, there's him, and there's the hole you dug for yourselves. She turned to face me, and for a moment I saw a flash of the woman I'd fallen in love with. Then it was gone, replaced by something cold and calculating. You think you're so perfect, don't you? Working all the time, coming home covered in dirt, falling asleep in front of the TV. When was the last time you took me anywhere nice? When was the last time you made me feel special? When was the last time you weren't lying to my face? Tommy makes me feel alive. Tommy's a parasite, and now you're one too. She slapped me then, hard enough to make my ears ring. I just stood there and took it. You'll regret this, she said. Both of you will. No, I said quietly. You will. The next few days passed in a blur of lawyers, private investigators, and sleepless nights. Stan the Shark lived up to his reputation, filing papers so fast it made my head spin. Sarah was served with divorce papers at Tommy's gym, in front of a crowd of his clients and coworkers. I heard about it from Jenny Martinez, who cleaned offices downtown and had a front row seat to the drama. Your wife started screaming about how you were trying to ruin her life, Jenny told me over coffee at Mel's Diner. Tommy tried to calm her down, but she was having none of it. Threw a weight at the wall and everything. How'd Tommy take it? Like a deer in headlights. Kept saying it wasn't his fault that Sarah seduced him. Real classy guy. I'd known Jenny since high school. She was good people. Worked 3 jobs to support her kids after her husband ran off. Never complained, never asked for handouts. The kind of person who deserved better than this town had to offer. There's something else, she said, lowering her voice. I was cleaning the law offices on 3rd Street yesterday. Heard Sarah talking to some lawyer about taking half your business. Which lawyer? Brennan and Associates, the ones with the billboards. I knew them. Ambulance chasers who'd take any case if the money was right. If Sarah thought she could get her hands on Weston landscaping, she was in for a rude awakening. That evening, I called a meeting with my crew. I'd been running the business with the same 4 guys for over a decade: Mike Kowalski, Jim Reed, Bobby Chen, and Pete Williams. They were more than employees, they were family. We met at the shop after hours, sitting around the break room table with beers and the kind of serious expressions usually reserved for funerals. "I guess you all heard what's going on," I started. "Hard not to," Mike said. He was my foreman, a steady guy in his 50s with 3 kids and a mortgage. "Word gets around. I want you to know that whatever happens with the divorce, your jobs are safe. I've got enough saved to weather this storm." "What about Sarah?" Bobby asked. "She going to try to take the business?" "She can try, but she's never worked a day here, never signed a contract, never even set foot in this shop except to ask for money. Any judge with half a brain will see through that play." "And Tommy?" Jim's voice was tight with anger. He'd been like an uncle to Tommy, taught him how to change oil and fix lawnmowers when the kid was in high school. "Tommy's cut off, permanently. If any of you see him around here, call the cops." "What if he shows up at a job site?" Pete asked. "Same thing. He's got no business with us anymore." We talked for another hour, going over security measures and contingency plans. These men had my back, and I wasn't going to let Sarah's greed put their livelihoods at risk. The next morning brought the first real surprise. I was having breakfast at Mel's when Tom Bradley slid into the booth across from me. Tom owned Bradley Construction, one of the biggest contractors in the county. We'd done business together for years. "Eli," he said, not meeting my eyes, "we need to talk." "Shoot." "I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to find another landscaping company for the Riverside project." I set down my coffee cup carefully. "Mind if I ask why?" "Sarah called my wife yesterday. Said some things about you that, well, Linda doesn't want to do business with you anymore." "What kind of things?" Tom shifted uncomfortably. "She said you were abusive, that you threatened her and Tommy, that you were unstable and might take it out on your work." The rage that hit me was white hot and immediate. I wanted to flip the table, to scream that it was all lies, to demand Tom choose sides. Instead, I took a deep breath and kept my voice level. "Tom, you've known me for 15 years. Have I ever given you reason to think I'm unstable?" "No, but have I ever delivered anything less than perfect work?" "Of course not, but Linda's being fed lies by a woman who's trying to destroy me because I caught her cheating. You know that, right?" Tom looked miserable. "I figured it was something like that. But you know how it is, Eli. Happy wife, happy life." "Yeah, I know exactly how it is." He left a 20 on the table and walked out without another word. I sat there for a long time, watching my reputation crumble one relationship at a time. By the end of the week, I'd lost 3 more clients. Sarah was making the rounds, playing the victim to anyone who'd listen. She was good at it. Tears on cue, just the right amount of fear in her voice when she talked about how volatile I'd become. The worst part was watching people I'd known for years choose sides. The Hendersons, whose lawn I'd maintained for a decade, suddenly didn't return my calls. Bob Martinez at the hardware store started treating me like I might snap at any moment. Even Father McKenna at St. Mary's seemed uncomfortable when I showed up for Sunday Mass. But for every friend I lost, another stepped up. Digger spread the word at the Rusty Anchor about what really happened. Jenny vouched for my character to anyone who'd listen. Mike's wife Maria started a whisper campaign among the church ladies, reminding them that Sarah had always been too good for this town, and that maybe there was more to the story. The battle lines were drawn. This was war now, and I intended to win. 3 weeks into the divorce proceedings, I got a call from my lawyer that changed everything. "We have a problem," Stan said. "Sarah's attorney filed a motion claiming you're hiding assets. They want a full audit of your business records." "Let them audit. I've got nothing to hide." "That's not the issue. The issue is who's backing her play." "What do you mean?" "Her legal fees. Brennan and Associates don't work for free, and Sarah doesn't have that kind of money. Someone's funding this war, and I think I know who." He was right, of course. Tommy's family had money, old money from his grandfather's manufacturing business. His mother Linda had remarried into the Brennan family years ago, which explained how Sarah had connected with the lawyers so quickly. "They're trying to bleed you dry," Stan continued. "Draw this out until you can't afford to fight anymore. Then they'll offer a settlement that gives Sarah everything she wants." "How long can we hold out?" "Depends on how deep their pockets are, and how dirty you're willing to get." That afternoon, I drove to the gym where Tommy worked. Elite Fitness was the kind of place where rich housewives went to pretend they were athletes, all chrome and mirrors and overpriced smoothies. Tommy was in his element here, surrounded by people who valued appearance over substance. I found him in the weight room, spotting some corporate executive who was probably paying more per session than I made in a day. Tommy saw me coming, and his face went pale. "We need to talk," I said. "I'm with a client." "Not anymore." I looked at the executive. "Sorry, but your trainer needs a break. Family emergency." The executive looked between us, sensing the tension, and decided he had somewhere else to be. Smart man. "You can't just walk in here," Tommy said once we were alone. "Actually, I can. It's a public business. But that's not why I'm here." "Then why?" "To give you a chance to do the right thing." Tommy laughed, but there was no humor in it. "The right thing? You mean like pretending to be happy with a wife who doesn't love me anymore?" "I mean like not destroying the man who raised you. You didn't raise me. You married my mother when I was already grown. I paid for your car, your insurance, your gym membership, your apartment deposit, $43,000 over 2 years, Tommy. Money I earned with my hands while you played house with my wife." His face flushed red. "I never asked for any of that." "No, you just took it. And then you took the one thing that mattered most to me." "Sarah came to me, not the other way around. She said you were cold, distant, that you treated her like a roommate instead of a wife. And you believed her?" "I saw how you were together, always working, never paying attention to her. She was lonely, Eli. She needed someone who understood her." The self-righteousness in his voice made me want to hit him. Instead, I stepped closer, close enough that he could smell the coffee on my breath. "Here's what's going to happen," I said quietly. "You're going to call off your mother's lawyers. You're going to convince Sarah to settle for what she's legally entitled to, which is nothing, and you're both going to disappear from my life forever. And if we don't, then I'll destroy you both." Tommy tried to laugh it off. "What are you going to do? Beat me up? You're not that kind of guy, Eli." "No, I'm not. I'm much worse than that. I'm the kind of guy who knows where all the bodies are buried." "What's that supposed to mean?" I pulled out my phone and showed him a photo. It was Tommy at the gym, but not working out. He was in the office, going through client files while the manager was at lunch. "Identity theft is a federal crime, Tommy, especially when you're stealing credit card information from rich clients who trust you with their personal details." The color drained from his face. "How did you—" "I know people. People who know how to watch, how to wait, how to document everything. You've been skimming client information for months, selling it to that crew in Indianapolis. 5,000 here, 10,000 there. Thought nobody would notice. You can't prove anything." I showed him another photo. This one was Tommy meeting with a man I didn't recognize, exchanging an envelope for cash. "Want to bet? Because the FBI takes this stuff very seriously, especially when there's a clear pattern of theft from multiple victims." Tommy sat down heavily on a weight bench, his face in his hands. "What do you want?" "I told you. Call off the lawyers. Convince Sarah to take the settlement Stan offered, and get out of my life." "I can't just—" "You can, and you will. Because the alternative is federal prison, and trust me, pretty boys like you don't do well in federal prison." I left him sitting there, staring at the photos on my phone. The identity theft thing was real. Digger's police contacts had been watching Tommy for weeks, building a case. I'd just given Tommy a chance to avoid the consequences. Whether he took it or not was up to him. Tommy made his choice the next day. Instead of backing down, he doubled down. I was at the shop, going over invoices, when my phone rang. It was Jenny Martinez, and she sounded scared. "Eli, you need to know what's happening. Tommy's at the diner, telling everyone you threatened him. He's saying you're dangerous, that people should stay away from you." "What exactly is he saying?" "That you showed up at his work and threatened to ruin him if he didn't stop seeing Sarah. That you've been stalking them, taking pictures. He's got half the town believing you've lost your mind." I closed my eyes and counted to 10. "Thanks for the heads up, Jenny." "There's more. Sarah's with him. She's crying, saying she's afraid to go home, that you might hurt her. Father McKenna's talking about organizing some kind of intervention." "An intervention. Like I was the problem here." I hung up and called Stan. "They're trying to flip the script," I told him, "making me out to be the bad guy." "I heard. My secretary's getting calls from concerned citizens asking if you're dangerous. This is actually good for us." "How is this good?" "Because they're overplaying their hand. Nobody who knows you is going to believe this act for long. And when the truth comes out, the backlash will destroy their credibility." "What if people do believe it? Then we make sure the truth comes out sooner rather than later." That evening, I got a visit from Sheriff Peterson. Dave Peterson had been sheriff for 12 years, a decent man trying to keep the peace in a town that didn't make it easy for him. "Eli," he said when I opened the door, "we need to talk." "About what?" "Tommy Brennan filed a complaint. Says you threatened him yesterday. Did he mention why I went to see him? He mentioned the divorce. Look, I know this is a tough time, but you can't be threatening people, even if they deserve it. I invited Dave in and poured 2 cups of coffee. We sat at my kitchen table, 2 middle-aged men trying to navigate a situation that had gotten out of hand. Dave, I've known you for 15 years. Have I ever been violent? Ever caused trouble? No, you haven't. That's why I'm here talking instead of arresting, but I need to know what really happened. I told him everything. The motel, the affair, the lawyers, the identity theft. Dave listened without interrupting, his cop face giving nothing away. You have proof of the credit card thing? He asked when I finished. Photos, bank records, witness statements. Your boys in Indianapolis have been building a case for months. Dave nodded slowly. That changes things. But Eli, you can't take the law into your own hands. If you have evidence of a crime, you bring it to us. I tried to give him a chance to do the right thing. I understand. But threatening people, even scumbags like Tommy, makes you the bad guy in the eyes of the law. So what happens now? Now, you stay away from both of them. Let your lawyer handle the divorce. Let us handle the criminal stuff. And pray this doesn't get any uglier than it already is. After Dave left, I sat in my empty house and tried to figure out my next move. Sarah and Tommy were winning the public relations war, painting me as an unstable man driven to violence by jealousy. The truth was more complicated, but truth had never been as compelling as a good story. That's when I remembered something Digger had told me years ago, back when he was still a cop. The best way to catch a liar is to give them enough rope to hang themselves. I called Stan and told him to set up a meeting. All parties, all lawyers, somewhere public where everything would be on the record. What are you planning? Stan asked. To give them exactly what they want. The meeting was set for Friday afternoon at the courthouse in one of the conference rooms used for depositions. Sarah and Tommy would be there with their lawyer, plus a court reporter to document everything. I spent the week preparing, gathering every piece of evidence I had, organizing it into a timeline that would be impossible to dispute. Photos, financial records, phone logs, witness statements, everything that proved what really happened and when. Friday came gray and cold, with the kind of rain that soaked through your clothes and chilled your bones. I arrived at the courthouse early, wearing my only suit and carrying a briefcase that held 5 years of my life reduced to documents and evidence. Sarah and Tommy were already there, sitting with their lawyer in the hallway. Sarah looked nervous, constantly checking her phone and fidgeting with her purse. Tommy was trying to project confidence, but I could see the sweat on his forehead from across the room. Their lawyer, Patricia Brennan, was Tommy's step-aunt and a piece of work in her own right. 50-something, sharp-dressed, with the kind of smile that could cut glass. She'd built her career on high-profile divorces and had a reputation for playing dirty. Mr. Weston, she said as I approached, I hope we can resolve this matter amicably. That depends on your definition of amicable. We filed into the conference room, taking seats around a polished table that reflected the fluorescent lights like a mirror. The court reporter set up her machine and waited for instructions. Before we begin, Patricia said, I want to state for the record that my clients are here under duress. Mr. Weston has made threats against both of them, and they fear for their safety. Stan leaned forward. What threats specifically? Mr. Weston approached my client Tommy Brennan at his place of employment and threatened to destroy his life if he didn't end his relationship with Sarah. Is that what happened, Tommy? Stan asked. Tommy nodded, not meeting my eyes. He said he knew where all the bodies were buried, that he'd make sure I went to prison. Interesting choice of words, Stan said. He opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. Because Mr. Weston wasn't threatening to frame you for anything. He was offering you a chance to avoid the consequences of crimes you'd already committed. Patricia's confidence flickered for just a moment. What crimes? Stan spread photos across the table. Tommy going through client files, Tommy meeting with unknown men, Tommy depositing cash at various banks around the city, identity theft, credit card fraud, conspiracy to commit wire fraud. The FBI has been building a case against your client for 6 months. The room went silent except for the soft clicking of the court reporter's machine. Tommy stared at the photos like they might disappear if he looked hard enough. These photos could be doctored, Patricia said, but her voice lacked conviction. They could be, but the FBI surveillance footage can't. Neither can the financial records showing deposits that match the amount stolen from gym clients. Sarah spoke for the first time since we'd sat down. Tommy, what is this? What are they talking about? It's nothing, Tommy said quickly. They're trying to frame me. Frame you, I finally spoke, my voice calm and measured. Tommy, You've been stealing from people who trusted you, using their personal information to buy things online, then selling those things for cash. The FBI has been watching you for months. You're lying. I pulled out my phone and played a recording. Tommy's voice, clear as day, talking to someone about the gym marks and how easy it was to get their information. That's illegal, Patricia snapped. You can't record people without their consent. Actually, I can. Indiana's a one-party consent state, and I wasn't the one recording. I looked directly at Tommy. Your buyer was. Turns out he was working with the FBI the whole time. Tommy's face went white. Sarah stared at him like she was seeing him for the first time. This is all very interesting, Patricia said, but it doesn't change the fact that my client Sarah is entitled to half of the marital assets. Actually, it does. Stan pulled out another folder. Indiana is a fault-based divorce state. Adultery affects asset division, especially when the adultery involves financial misconduct. What financial misconduct? Sarah has been taking money from the marital accounts and giving it to Tommy. Money that was then used to facilitate his criminal activities. That makes her an accessory. That's ridiculous. Sarah didn't know. Didn't know what? That her lover was a criminal? Or that the money she was stealing from her husband was being used to commit federal crimes? Sarah finally found her voice. I never stole anything. Stan slid a bank statement across the table. 17 withdrawals over 6 months, all for amounts just under the reporting threshold, all within hours of meeting with Tommy. Those were for personal expenses. Like what? Because according to your own financial disclosure, you have no significant personal expenses, no car payment, no student loans, no credit card debt. Where did $43,000 go, Sarah? The number hung in the air like a physical presence. Sarah's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Here's what's going to happen, Stan continued. Sarah will accept a settlement of $5,000 and whatever personal property she brought to the marriage. In exchange, we won't pursue charges for financial misconduct or file a civil suit for recovery of the stolen funds. That's extortion, Patricia said. No, that's justice. Your clients committed crimes. We have evidence. They can face the consequences or they can accept a generous settlement and disappear. And if we refuse? I spoke again, my voice steady and cold. Then Monday morning, I file a complaint with the FBI. Tuesday, I file a civil suit for recovery of stolen funds. Wednesday, I hold a press conference and tell this whole story to every reporter in the state. By Thursday, Tommy will be in federal custody and Sarah will be facing charges as an accessory. The silence stretched out for what felt like hours. Finally, Tommy spoke. Sarah, we need to take the deal. What? No. This is our chance to what? Go to prison? Sarah, they have everything. Photos, recordings, bank records. It's over. Sarah looked around the room like a trapped animal, searching for an escape that didn't exist. When she spoke again, her voice was small and defeated. I want to talk to my lawyer, alone. We stepped outside while they conferred. Through the glass door, I could see Patricia gesturing angrily while Sarah cried and Tommy stared at his hands. Think they'll take it? Stan asked. They don't have a choice. 20 minutes later, we were called back in. Patricia's professional composure was cracked but holding. My clients accept your terms, she said, with one condition. Mr. Weston agrees not to pursue any further legal action related to these matters. Agreed, as long as they both stay out of my life permanently. The paperwork took another hour. Sarah signed everything with shaking hands, her mascara running down her cheeks in black streams. Tommy didn't say another word, just signed where he was told and stared at the table. When it was over, they filed out without looking back. Sarah paused at the door for just a moment, like she might say something, but then thought better of it and walked away. I sat alone in the conference room for a few minutes after everyone left, listening to the rain against the windows and feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. 6 months later, I was sitting on the deck of my lake house watching the sun set over water that looked like molten gold. The divorce had been finalized 3 weeks ago. Sarah got her $5,000 and disappeared back to wherever she'd come from before she'd landed in my life like a tornado. Tommy wasn't so lucky. The FBI had arrested him 2 days after our courthouse meeting. Turned out the identity theft ring was bigger than anyone had imagined, with connections to organized crime in 3 states. Tommy was looking at 5 to 10 years in federal prison. The local news had covered the story extensively, painting a picture of a small-town personal trainer who'd gotten in over his head with dangerous people. My name was mentioned only in passing as the stepfather who'd helped expose the crimes. The narrative was clean, simple, and completely true. My business had not only survived the scandal, but thrived. Clients who dropped me came crawling back, embarrassed by how quickly they'd believed Sarah's lies. New customers called every week, drawn by word-of-mouth recommendations from people who respected how I'd handled the situation. "You could have destroyed them both," Digger said, joining me on the deck with 2 beers. "Why didn't you?" "Because destroying them would have destroyed me too. This way, justice got served and I get to move on with my life." "Think you'll ever see them again?" "Sarah? No. She's probably found some other sucker to leech off of. Tommy will be in prison for the next few years, and after that, he'll be too busy trying to rebuild his life to bother with me." We drank in comfortable silence, watching a family of ducks paddle across the lake. The water was calm, reflecting the sky like a perfect mirror. "You know what the best part is?" I said finally. "What's that?" "I'm free. For the first time in 5 years, I don't have to worry about what Sarah wants, what Tommy needs, what crisis requires my immediate attention and money. I can just be myself." "And who is that, exactly?" I thought about it for a moment. A man who learned that sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to be a victim. My phone buzzed with a text message. Jenny Martinez, asking if I wanted to grab dinner tomorrow night. We'd been seeing each other casually for a few weeks. Nothing serious, just 2 people who'd been through rough times helping each other heal. I texted back that dinner sounded perfect. "New girlfriend?" Digger asked, grinning. "Maybe. We'll see." "Think you'll get married again?" "Someday. When I meet someone who wants a partner, not a provider. Someone who understands that love is about building something together, not taking everything you can get." The sun disappeared behind the tree line, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Somewhere in the distance, a loon called out across the water, its voice lonely and wild. "You did good, Eli," Digger said. "You could have let this destroy you. Instead, you used it to become stronger." I had help. Good friends, good lawyers, and a whole lot of luck. Luck had nothing to do with it. You saw what they were, and you acted accordingly. That's not luck, that's wisdom. We finished our beers as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. Tomorrow I'd go back to work, back to the simple pleasure of making things grow and helping people create beauty in their lives. But tonight, I was exactly where I wanted to be. The lake house had been Sarah's idea originally. She'd wanted a weekend retreat, somewhere to escape the boring routine of small-town life. I'd bought it to make her happy, another attempt to fill the void that I now understood could never be filled. But after she left, I'd discovered something unexpected. The house wasn't about her anymore. It was about me, about the peace I'd found in solitude and the strength I'd discovered in silence. I'd learned to fish again, something I hadn't done since childhood. I'd planted a garden, small but productive, that gave me vegetables for half the year. I'd even started writing, documenting the lessons I'd learned about trust, betrayal, and the price of willful blindness. "You should write a book," Digger said, as if reading my thoughts. "About what happened. Might help other guys in similar situations." "Who'd want to read about a middle-aged landscaper getting cheated on?" "You'd be surprised. There are a lot of men out there who've been where you were. Most of them handle it worse than you did." I considered that. Maybe there was something to be said for sharing the story, for helping other men understand that they didn't have to be victims, that they could choose how their stories ended. "I'll think about it," I said. Later that night, after Digger had gone home, I sat at my kitchen table with a legal pad and started writing. Not about revenge or anger, but about the moment I'd realized that my worth wasn't determined by whether someone else valued it. The words came slowly at first, then faster as I found my rhythm. I wrote about the signs I'd ignored, the lies I'd chosen to believe, the moment in that motel room when everything became clear, but mostly I wrote about what came after. The choice to fight back intelligently rather than emotionally, the decision to use the system rather than circumvent it, the discovery that justice served cold was more satisfying than revenge served hot. By dawn, I had 20 pages. It wasn't much, but it was a start. I made coffee and sat on the deck again, watching the lake come alive with morning light. A great blue heron stood motionless in the shallows, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Patient, focused, efficient. I understood that heron. I'd learned to be like that heron. My phone rang. Jenny, calling to confirm our dinner plans. "Looking forward to it," I said. "Me too. I'm making lasagna. Hope you're hungry." "Starving." After we hung up, I realized I was smiling. When was the last time I'd done that? Really smiled, not the fake expression I'd worn for months while my marriage crumbled around me. I couldn't remember. But I was smiling now, and it felt good. The heron struck, coming up with a fish that flashed silver in the morning sun. It swallowed its prize and resumed its patient vigil, ready for the next opportunity. I finished my coffee and went inside to get ready for work. There were lawns to mow, gardens to tend, beauty to create from chaos. It was good work, honest work, work that left me tired in my body but satisfied in my soul. And tonight, there would be dinner with a good woman who'd never asked me for anything except my company. It was, I thought as I drove toward town, a pretty good life. The wedding invitation arrived on a Tuesday morning, mixed in with bills and advertisements like a snake in a flower garden, cream-colored cardstock, expensive printing, the kind of formal announcement that screamed money and pretension. Sarah Michelle Patterson and Thomas James Brennan request the honor of your presence. I stared at it for a long moment, then started laughing. The sound echoed through my empty kitchen, growing louder until tears ran down my cheeks. They'd found each other again. After everything that had happened, after Tommy's arrest and conviction, after Sarah's humiliation in court, they'd somehow managed to reunite and convince themselves that this time would be different. Tommy had served 18 months in minimum security federal prison, getting out early for good behavior and cooperation with investigators. Sarah had apparently waited for him, living off whatever money she'd managed to save and probably working her way through a series of temporary benefactors. Now they were getting married in some expensive venue in Indianapolis, far enough from our small town that they could pretend to be different people with clean histories. I showed the invitation to Jenny over dinner that night. We'd been together for almost a year now, taking things slow but steady. She was everything Sarah wasn't. Honest, hard-working, content with simple pleasures. "Are you going to go?" she asked, reading the invitation with raised eyebrows. "Hell no, but I'm tempted to send a gift." "What kind of gift?" "A nice frame, with copies of all the court documents from our divorce. Let them remember what they are." Jenny laughed. "You're terrible." "No, I'm practical. They'll destroy each other eventually. People like that always do. But it won't be my problem anymore." I threw the invitation in the trash and forgot about it until 3 months later when Digger called with news. "Your ex-wife and her boy toy made the papers again," he said without preamble. "What happened?" "Tommy got arrested. Domestic violence. Apparently he came home drunk and put Sarah in the hospital." I felt a familiar cold anger, but it was distant now, like an echo from another life. "Is she okay?" "Broken nose, black eye, couple of cracked ribs. She'll live. But get this, she's not pressing charges." "Of course she's not." "Gets better. Turns out Tommy's been using again. Not identity theft this time, but drugs. Cocaine, mostly. Blew through Sarah's savings and started stealing from his new employer." I wasn't surprised. Prison had a way of either breaking people completely or teaching them to be smarter criminals. Tommy had apparently chosen option 3, becoming a dumber criminal. "Where is he now?" "County lockup. His parole officer violated him on the drug charges. He's looking at going back to federal prison for the full remainder of his original sentence." "And Sarah?" "Last I heard, she was staying at a women's shelter. Broke, beaten up, and finally starting to understand what kind of man she married." I hung up feeling something I hadn't expected. Pity. Not for Tommy. He'd made his choices and would live with the consequences. But for Sarah, who'd thrown away a decent life chasing excitement and wound up with nothing but bruises and broken dreams. That night, I lay in bed next to Jenny and thought about the paths our lives take. A year and a half ago, I'd been married to a woman who saw me as nothing more than a provider. Stepfather to a criminal who viewed me as a mark to be conned. Now I was with a woman who loved me for who I was, not what I could give her. My business was thriving, my reputation restored, my life rebuilt on a foundation of truth instead of lies. Sometimes the best revenge really was living well. "What are you thinking about?" Jenny asked, her voice soft in the darkness. "Just grateful," I said. "For all of it, even the bad parts." "Why the bad parts?" "Because they led me here, to you, to this life, to understanding what really matters." She curled closer to me, her head on my shoulder. "I love you, Eli Weston." "I love you too." And I meant it. Not the desperate, grasping love I'd felt for Sarah, but something deeper and more genuine. The love of a man who'd learned the difference between wanting someone and needing them, between passion and partnership. Outside, rain began to fall on the lake, each drop creating ripples that spread outward in perfect circles before disappearing into the darkness. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new chances to choose between wisdom and foolishness. But tonight, I was exactly where I belonged. 6 months later, Jenny and I were married in a simple ceremony at the lake house. Digger was my best man, and Jenny's sister was her maid of honor. We exchanged vows we'd written ourselves, promising to be partners in all things, to choose each other every day, to build something lasting together. There were no expensive flowers, no hired photographers, no pretentious displays of wealth, Just two people who'd found each other after learning the hard way what love wasn't, celebrating what love could be. As we danced to our first song as husband and wife, I caught sight of something that made me smile. There, standing perfectly still in the shallows of the lake, was the great blue heron I'd watched so many mornings from